How's it going? It's Grant with the Garden of Eder, and in this video we are going to stock the simple Neocaradina setup. We've got our male yellow Rilly Neocaradina, and then we've got some female yellow Neos. We got some nice ones as well as some culls, so we're just hoping that the male is going to transfer some of his genes onto the offspring. And we've got no males, so that way it's 100% his genetics being passed down to the next generation. All of the females have saddles. I'll point that out later. However, none of them have eggs, except for one has one single egg, so I will keep a close eye on that shrimp and cull it. And then there's one juvenile in there as well that just would not get out of the net and jumped right into the cup. So that one is going to go into the tank, and I'm going to keep a close eye on that. And in 2 weeks, if it doesn't look like a female or I can't see a saddle, I'll just cull that into the next tank over. So we got the tank cycled. If you didn't see how we did that, our last video, the simple Neocaradina shrimp setup video, goes over that. We've got a nice film of biofilm going on. If you can see the little white sludge on the wood, it's really hard to see. It's not that visible. This wood doesn't have a lot of it on it. However, there are a few types of woods, like the Mapani will get a ton of biofilm on it. So it's just that white fuzzy stuff on the wood. No need to panic or get rid of it at all. There was a little bit more on it, but I kind of moved the branch into its spot. A lot of people will float their wood and get it to sink before they add it to their tank. I didn't do that for this setup because I wanted all the biofilm and goodies to be on the wood for the shrimp to eat it when I added those to the tank. So any fuzz or anything like that, just leave it, don't worry about it. And then we happened to get a couple of hitchhikers with this moss that we added into the tank. We got some pond snail, and I'm hoping that we will get some Malaysian trumpet snails as well. I am not a hater on the snails. I'm all for them. They're a huge benefit to the baby shrimps. They'll eat the little slime that's left behind, and they also eat any leftover food. So usually what I do is a drip acclimation if I get any new shrimp. We've got a couple videos on drip acclimating shrimp and then adding shrimp to tanks and stuff like that. So I'm not going to go over that. However, I'm going to show you what I kind of do for my tanks where the parameters are on point and they didn't go through any travels, not a lot of stress. So I call it in my quick acclimation, where I just take my solo cups and I only put about a quarter of the water into the cup, and then I will take a empty solo cup, scoop water out of the tank, and then pour water into the cup until it's full like it is now. So in the very first cup we have our yellow male and then a female that was kind of splotchy on color, and then like just a cull out of the tank, and Shelby's escaped tank right next to us. So those are the first 3 shrimp we are going to add to the tank. And also we have taken away the air pump and we hooked this up to our closed loop system above the fridge. So the first cup of shrimp is in, and then the star of the evening is this yellow Neocaradina shrimp right there. And then the other ones will be all females. None of them have the Rilly pattern. The one shrimp, the male, is the only one that I've gotten with it. I could get more out of the other colony hopefully one day. However, I am hoping to increase my chances by passing the genetics on from that male on to a bunch of other females. So there's 2 females and 1 male so far. And then the next cup has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and a juvenile. And these were out of the nice pond. Now, I don't normally like to add the larger shrimp. However, I wanted to make sure I was only adding females. The one smaller one right there, you can see the saddle. The saddle are unfertilized eggs right behind the head. It kind of looks like a saddle to a horse. It's really clear on some of these shrimp walking by. It's a good sign that your shrimp are nice and healthy. If they can develop eggs, chances are the eggs can be fertilized. And as soon as the eggs are fertilized, the eggs will drop down to the belly and they will carry them in their little swimmerettes until the eggs develop. It takes normally about 30 days for the eggs to hatch. And then once the eggs hatch, the babies can have their own babies anywhere from 2 to 3 months, usually closer towards the 3 months. So the shrimp, the smaller ones that have the saddles, those are right around 2 months in age. And the next cup, these are female culls. I was hoping to increase the chances of the clear body by adding in some lower pigment. It might work, it might not. I'm just hoping that as many females as I threw in, I try to do 15 to 20, and I'm just hoping that I get quite a few babies out of the mix that will end up really, and then I will use those, cull everything else out of the tank, and just continue to breed on the reallys until I have that pattern breeding true, and to say we have yellow Neocaradina really pattern out. And so all I'm gonna do for these guys now is let them do their thing for a whole week. No food, there's plenty of biofilm for them to graze on in the tank. And then when I do feed, I'm gonna start off with a very, very tiny pellet, or even a third of a pellet of shrimp food, the commercial shrimp food, Shrimp King, Pure Nordic, CSF, or Low Keys. They're all great foods. I just try to feed a nice variety, but you want just a tiny, tiny pellet the first time you feed. Make sure it's all gone within an hour or 2. If it's not, you can remove it. Feed less next time, wait maybe 2 to 3 days before you feed again. However, if they eat it all in the hour or so, you can feed them more next time till you can figure out how much food they'll eat. And I usually feed every 2 days on most of my tanks. I'll feed every 3 days on some of my starting tanks just to get them going, to figure out how much food they can really eat before I've put too much food. A lot of people's biggest issues with shrimp keeping is they will overfeed. So we got the snails as a backup to get any of the food that doesn't get eaten that sifts into the substrate. But if you feed the right amount, you'll never have to vacuum up the bottom of the substrate on any of the tanks. I've got tanks that are 4 years old, 5 years old, that I've never vacuumed up any of the gravel. I've just simply done water changes and kept up with feeding every 2 to 3 days the proper amount, and there's no buildup of waste. The shrimp are very low on bioload, so I'm not really too much worried about cycling a tank as much as I am running the tank for 30 days to get a nice biofilm layer over everything so that I don't have to feed my shrimp a lot of food. So that is very important. The next thing I think everybody should know are the water parameters. For these guys, my tap water comes out at around 170 TDS. When I add the shrimp prep, it boosts it up to 180 TDS. TDS is total dissolved solids. And then the pH of my water comes out about 7.4 because the substrate is inert. It's not going to alter that at all. So the tank is also at 7.4 pH. Even though there's driftwood in there, it really doesn't play a big factor. You would have to have so much of the tank in order to lower it. There's just too much KH in the water. And the KH in the water is around 3 to 4. It varies a little bit, but not really that much. But the KH is responsible for maintaining the pH in this tank. Without any KH in the water, the pH could swing with the lights being on and off. So the KH is very important. I recommend at least 2 for Neocaradinas. The only reason why my KH kind of fluctuates is because the tap water, it's a little bit different. Every so months they change the filters or something like that, or they'll do a different, instead of chlorine, they'll do chloramine or something like that. So you just kind of want to keep an eye on it. But it's not really something I check too often. Like I said, maybe only every 6 months or so. But I usually just check the TDS. As long as the TDS hasn't altered at all, there's really nothing to check. The GH is 7 to 8, and I think those are spot on for Neocaradina. You could do a little less if you're using RO water, or your tap water came out a little lower. I've had shrimp do very well in 3GH at 70 TDS, and of course I would try to get the KH at 2, or have some type of crushed coral in there to regulate the pH, or you could even do active soil with the low pH with Neocaradina. They can swing very high. They can drop to low 6 all the way down to maybe 5.8, and as high as 8.5 with some of the Sulawesi tanks. So they're super hardy. I even have a buddy down the road who has some culls that he threw into his clownfish tank, and even in the salt water they're still living. So they're super hardy. The next thing that I like to make sure I'm on top of is the total dissolved solids. That's really the only thing that I check with my TDS pen. Everything else is just not that much regulated. I know what my water parameters are and everything like that, and what they are because of my routines with my other tanks. So as a beginner, you might want to check your tanks periodically until you get your own flow down. And then the next thing would be temperature. As you can see, there's no thermometer or any heater in the tank. I'm not worried about temperature at all with Neocaradina. The outside, their temperatures drop below 40, and then they'll get all the way up into the 90s during the summertime. So the temperatures with them is really not that important. What you want to make sure doesn't happen is a spike in temperature. So you go from really high to really low, or really low to really high really fast. As long as that doesn't happen and it's a gradual increase or a gradual decrease, they can take just about any temperature you throw at them. As long as the water doesn't freeze over, these guys should be good without any heater whatsoever. So save that electricity bill. And also, a lot of people have more issues with their heater malfunctioning and overheating a tank and causing one of those spikes really quickly. So just avoid that. Whatever temperature you keep your house at is most likely good or perfect for the shrimp. You want to keep in mind, the lower the temperature, it kind of breeds slower. However, just like a hospital, it's going to be a lot cleaner. You're not going to have as much worries with bacterial diseases or infections or anything like that. Also, your higher temperatures, you're going to have an increase in growth, an increase in breeding, but you're going to risk those bacterial infections a lot more. So I try to keep the temperatures below 74 for that point, but outside I just simply can't do that. So all I do is just make sure the water is as clean as possible, so I increase my water changes a little bit more when it's hotter outside. And then regular water changes inside, I do 10% every week, or if I'm slacking and I can only do them every 2 weeks, I'll do 20 to 30%. All I do is drain the water and then add shrimp prep with the tap water, and my parameters are on point. Ammonia, nitrates, and nitrates, these are all 0 in almost all of my tanks. With shrimp, there's such a low bioload. They don't really eat that much. They're more like scavengers, grazers. They should just be feasting on the biofilm in your tank. So the bioload shouldn't be that high. Your ammonia should be very low. If it's not, you're overfeeding, or you might have some substrate or fertilizer issues. However, if you're using an inert substrate with nothing in it, you should have no ammonia issues. If you are, because you overfed and you're working on an issue, plants help a lot. Floaters are a great way to reduce your nitrates. So, but if you're doing everything right, you shouldn't have to worry about ammonia or nitrates or anything like that. So I don't even test for those. But if you do test, they should be as low as possible. Nitrates are kind of deadly to shrimp. It burns their gills, and that will stop them from breathing. So that is not a good thing. And then the last thing I'd like to talk about are lights. The lights are very important for Neocaradina shrimp. The strength of their pigment really comes out if you have a stronger light on than if you just have the cheap LED lights. That's why they look so good outside, is just they're constantly in the direct sun and they're just glaring and gleaming. The substrate will also play a big effect. The whiter substrate is rough on the shrimp because they will try to camouflage and blend in. So they're going to be as clear as possible, but still showing some color, but they just look so much nicer on the deeper, blacker substrate. So try to go dark if you can with your substrate, but a nice bright light is going to help. Now it might cause some algae issues. You don't need it on for that long. 6 to 8 hours is plenty enough time for the shrimp to get their sunbathing in, as well as proper plant growth and keeping those algae issues away. So I think that about wraps up this video. If you guys have any more questions about Neocaradina, please drop those comments down below. I'd be happy to answer those for you guys. And please subscribe if you haven't already. We've got a simple Caradina setup that we're going to do. We're going to build another rack. We got to paint it, do the closed air loop system. I'm not sure if I should just do a rack build and then paint it and show it with the tanks on another video, or if I should build the rack and paint it and then do the closed loop air system in another video yet. I just got so many ideas, so many videos I want to crank out, so I might just throw them together. And then we have to get outside before it gets too hot and do the koi and turtle clean out. So the tarps and all the pumps and everything is ordered for all those projects. I'm doing a little bit of each every day. So if you'd like to see those future projects come out, you gotta stay tuned and hit that notification bell. Thanks for watching.